Talking about the business model canvas, and the best thing about the business model canvas is that it really takes the place of your traditional business plan, which can be 20-30 pages. It's difficult to adjust. It's just this big brick of a product that's not lean or easily adjustable once you're making decisions and getting information. So the business model canvas is made of 9 different segments, and we're going to focus on the segments in clusters. So on the right side is the customer segment and our section, and we're going to focus there first, and then we'll move over to value proposition as part of that. Then we'll go into the offerings section, which is mostly focused on back of house types of operations and things like that. So I do want to point out that as we're going through each of these blocks, the customer segments, value proposition, and key activities are the cornerstone of the business model canvas, because a lot of the links that you'll make through the other boxes will come back to those things. So we'll get into that, but know that once you define in one box that there's so many interconnected and interdependent linkages through each segment that you want to make sure that you're keeping track of things very clearly. So let's talk about customer segments. So as I said, on the customer section of the business model canvas, everything kind of comes back and links to customer segments. So you want to make sure you define this really well. So customer segments or customers are anybody who you're delivering this value to. So that can be customers or that can be users. You really want to understand who these people are. What are their personas? How do they make decisions? What kind of car do they drive? How do they dress? How do they receive information to make these types of decisions? What's their education level? Everything about what makes this person who they are and how they might engage with your company. So what are their current service and product offerings? What are their pain points with those service or lack of service and product offerings? And what kind of gains would they want to or would they value from a new solution? So the output for this is a list of personas, and I would say you really want to target on your top 3 customer segments to start, and you really want to have as detailed of a persona as you can. From this point, you want to prioritize them and make sure you want to pick, if you could only pitch to one customer segment, which one would you choose, and start there. So once you've identified your customer segments and you have a really good understanding of who these people are and how they make decisions and how they live their life and their existing behavioral patterns, you can start to develop a value proposition. So again, this is the value that you're committing to deliver and also that your customer is expecting to receive. Your value proposition should directly address how you're helping solve whatever problems they have currently, whatever, trying to relieve the pains that they have, and also what gains they can get. So there are a lot of ways that you can build a value proposition statement. This is a really easy one of, we do X, we help X do Y by Z. So if you can fill in these blanks, that can get you started on thinking about what your value propositions are. So the output of this is that you'd have a prioritized list of multiple value propositions that tie to each customer segment. So from there, we talk about channels. So channels are every way in which you are communicating with your customer segment. And this is through the different stages of their involvement with your company. So from how do they become aware of your product or service? How do they evaluate the features or the price or anything the value to them? How do they then purchase? And then even the delivery of this product or service, and then even post-sales. How are we communicating with our customers after they've made a purchase? The output here is to list the channels and link them to the different customer segments that you identified previously. And you want to also do that in a way that's through every stage of their involvement with the organization. So customer relationships. So again, depending on this is basically how are you engaging with your customers through that journey. So if you think about a journey map of your customer from the moment they become aware of your business or your product or your service to the point where they have made the purchase and they are utilizing the product or service, what are the different engagement points? What kind of relationship are you having with them? And, you know, is it a relationship that is you're providing personal assistance? Is it a relationship where it's self-service? Is it an automated service? Is it something that's community-based? Just to throw out some examples. So the output here is, again, a list or a description of the customer relationships as they relate to the different customers in the segments as they're going through the different stages through their journey. Revenue stream. So this kind of closes out that right side of the box as we talk about revenue stream. So this is, how do you make money, right? Do you have a subscription model? Is it a one-time sale? Is it a repeat sale? Is it a frequent sale? Is it something where you have a retainer or usage fees? Are there licensing types of ways that you make revenues, or is this indirect? If like social media is very common, even on websites, it's not the user or the customer segment that pays where the revenue is generated. It's through advertising, through a third party. You know, you can have different revenue streams for different segments. For instance, at Innovation Portal, we have 3 major sources of revenue. One is through donations and grants. Another is through our month-to-month memberships, which, you know, they're month at a time. They're frequent, but there's not a schedule of time, so we don't know how many members we'll have from month to month. And we have long-term leases, which are a scheduled period of time, a designated amount of money every single month. So our revenue streams are different for each of those different customer segments. And so the way that in the value that we're delivering to them, so think about that. You know, are you delivering the same thing to everybody, or do you have different offerings that would require different revenue models? So now that we have this list of all your customer segments, your value proposition, and how you're going to relate and through what channels to reach these customers and engage with these customers, and what revenue models you're presenting to them as their options as they are evaluating products and services in your field. So again, everything kind of comes back when you want to very clearly say, okay, well, this segment has this value proposition, and so this is the appropriate revenue stream for them. Now we're going to move on from the customer offerings, or the customer segments, which is really your front-facing, some people call this the front of stage part of your business model canvas, to the backstage part, which is really what does your infrastructure look like. So again, just key activities are going to be the cornerstone of this section, so you want to make sure that you get this part really, really nailed down. So these are your core functions. Like, what do you have to do as a business to be able to perform, create, and deliver the value that you have promised through your value proposition? This can be some examples of key activities are research and development, product development, marketing, or sales and customer relationships or customer service. It can also be once you have launch and you have kind of figured out what your business model is going to be, and you're really working towards product market fit, and so then you're figuring out how you might scale. You'll start focusing on operations. What's your intake? How can you automate so that you can be ready to scale? So again, these are the critical activities that you must perform to be able to deliver the value to your customer. So you want to list these activities as they relate to your different value propositions. And then from there, we'll start talking about key resources. So this is all the things that you need to be able to perform those activities that you just identified. And these resources can be physical. Is it a space? Is it a lab? Is it something that people need to interact with physically and in person? Is it intellectual property? Is it the people and the human resources aspect of who you have on your team? Or it could be financial also. What cash do you need to have? Do you need to take on lines of credit? Do you need to look at external funding? Just all the things that you need to be able to perform the activities to deliver the value to your customer segments. So again, this is a list of resources linked to each activity. And again, you might prioritize these activities and the resources needed to achieve that. Then you go to key partnerships. So key partnerships are any stakeholder that you can engage with to help you be able to deliver on these key activities. So sometimes these partners are board members. Sometimes these partners are people in your community or in your same space that are doing something similar that can help you have a greater reach. So anything that can help you optimize efficiency, gain economies of scale, get greater reach, maybe reduce your risk even, or acquire additional resources. I think you also need to think what's critical versus not critical when you're thinking about key activities, because key partnerships can also include outsourcing. So there are certain things that are commonly outsourced because they're not the core part of the core activities for an organization, such as human resources and payroll and those kinds of functions, or legal, right? Like we don't have legal experts on our team and it's not core to our service delivery. However, we do need legal help from time to time, and so we outsource that to a law firm, or accounting and bookkeeping, right? So just thinking about what's critical versus not, and for those things that are critical, what partnerships can you leverage to achieve those activities? So again, you want to have a list of partnerships with how they relate to each key activity. From here, we talk about cost structure. So cost structure incorporates both fixed and variable costs. So variable costs will change and fluctuate, especially like if you're hiring or you're engaging with contractors and it's not consistent, or if your materials cost changes per how many customers you're serving. So that's, commissions, if you have commissions for sales and things like that, things that are fluctuating or dependent upon how your customer segment is engaging with you, or your sales and how things are growing. And then you have fixed costs, so things that don't change based on the production output. So these can be things like your rent, your insurance payments, and things that are very predictable and steady. So here you want to have a list of the cost structure and their relationship to the key activity. So to be able to perform these key activities, what does it cost you? And is that a fixed or is that a variable cost? It's also worth noting what that scope looks like of how much of your costs are variable versus fixed, and if that's okay, right? Sometimes economies of scale are how do we make more of our variable costs become fixed, or at least less variable as we grow and as we're planning to scale, so that it's not one-to-one as far as every sale actually makes us have this % more of a cost. You want to try to reduce that. So this is a very busy slide, but it's also to kind of demonstrate how all these different segments are related and how they feed off of each other and how they inform one another. As I said before, the customer segments is really critical, and all of the customer relationships, the channels, and even your value propositions come back to your customer segments and how you've defined them. And then on the infrastructure side, everything comes back to what are your key activities. I think it's really important to make sure that when you're defining these things as you're going through the exercise, to make sure that you're keeping things organized so that okay, customer segment 1 and then value proposition 1, and then you can talk about the customer relationship and the channels for that customer segment 1, and then also what's the revenue stream for customer segment 1. That way, if you number them, it's not as difficult to go through if you have multiples and keep things appropriately linked. So again, the biggest benefit I think to the business model canvas is it allows you to make adjustments. At this stage in a business, especially the early stages, you're constantly getting information. You're constantly getting information on your customers. You're making adjustments to your key activities, and you're testing these out to try to get this product market fit. The business model canvas makes it very easy for you to define these things as you're getting this information and learning along the way, so that you're operating in a way and delivering in a way that is the best to help you grow. So you're going to take a few minutes to complete your own business model canvas. At this stage, what you're basing this off of is purely assumption, right? So what are your hypotheses? What do you think your key your customer segments are, and what they want, and their pains, and what they want for gains? What value proposition do you think they respond well to? What are the key activities that you think are going to be core to your business infrastructure? And then as you get information through your customer validation process, you can start to adjust this and adjust throughout the business model canvas as you go. So with that, good luck with developing your first business model canvas.